Deuteronomy 8:18 reveals a secret about building wealth that every man and woman, boy and child need to understand. You see, many Christians, they understand the source of wealth, but very often they fail to understand the process of creating wealth the biblical way. Now, in today's program, I am likely to reveal not only the source for those who need a refresher on the source of all wealth, but also on the process of building wealth the biblical way. Now, any attempt to build wealth, it begins with you having a clear vision. All right. And a clear vision stands on three pillars. One, your desire. Two, the reason for your desire. And three, the strategy to attain your desire. Today, I am likely to take a high level overview of vision based on the three pillars of vision. Now, the first question I want you to ask yourself is, what is your vision? Now, many persons may have a vision to attain financial independence. Now, to attain financial independence, there are several things that you must understand. But just before I get into attaining financial independence, I want to associate this concept with biblical terminologies. Now, in Deuteronomy 8:18, it is clear that God said, I give the power to get wealth. So we understand that God is the source. God gives the power to get wealth. As we go deeper into this study, I will also reveal other biblical facts that sets the stage for God people to position themselves to embrace the best life here on earth. Now, let's go into today's lesson. Vision represents three concepts, stands on three pillars: your desire, the reason for your desire, and strategies to realize that desire. In this context, you want to attain financial independence, perhaps because you are fed up of working the paycheck to paycheck cycle, perhaps because you have dreams and hopes and aspirations for yourself and your loved ones, and you've recognized that your single source of income, in spite of how hard you work, is totally inadequate to help you to accomplish the dream. So now that you know that the source of wealth comes from our Creator, you now have a desire to attain financial independence. Now, there are several things that you must consider as you set yourself up to attain financial independence. And here is where we begin to look and examine of what is the process. So God is the source, but you still need to understand the process, because understanding the source, divorced from the process, you may not position yourself to attain the dreams and hopes and aspirations that you have for yourself. So let's begin by examining the process. Any attempt to position yourself to attain financial independence, you must first of all identify a source of income. Now, as you begin to look at the source of income, income can come from multiple sources. For example, you can work to earn. But let me expand on this as you begin to understand the process. Many people work to earn and simply earn to spend. And because you're working to earn and earning to spend, the paycheck to paycheck cycle continues. And you continue to simply embrace a life of poverty when what you really want to achieve is a life of financial abundance. So it's important for you to understand what we were about to go into here. To get to that point of financial independence, you must have a source of income. Again, the income can come from multiple sources. But let us suppose that your source, you can only work based on where you are to earn money. It's important to understand the reason for work. And let me expand on this just a little bit. You simply do not work just to earn and pay bills. But this is the real reason why you work. This is the wisdom in committing yourself to work. One, you work to earn, you earn to save, you save to invest, and you invest to build wealth. Now, as I go deeper into the strategies today, you will better understand this concept. But just take note, any attempt to position yourself to attain financial independence, you must have a source of income. Second, as you think about your source of income, it's important to also recognize that you will have a source of expenditure. For example, if your source of income is coming through your work, you will have expenses. For example, to get from your home to your work, you have transportation cost. To maintain yourself during that day at work, you have to cover eating. And you have these different type of expenses that you want to consider. Why? Because when you separate your income from your expenditure, you want to ensure that you have a positive balance. All of this represents the process. So you have a desire, but you must have vision and clarity about that vision, because many people work and work and work and work with a vision of what they want to accomplish, but simply because you are not measuring your income, the process, against the balance sheet, you're not measuring your income against your expenses, processes, very often you end up with a negative balance instead of a positive balance. Now, in this context of understanding the process that I'm revealing to you, you need to, at the end of expenses, you should have a positive balance sheet. Now, there's a reason why you need to have this positive balance sheet. Why? Because with a positive balance sheet, two things you're aiming for. One is to invest in your future plans. And what is that future plans? You want to get to that point of financial independence. So you must have a clear mental picture in terms of how much you're investing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that's going to help you to get to your future plans. And there's a number of things that you can invest in. As we begin to look at strategies, I will show you some of those things in which you can invest in. But you must have a positive balance sheet at the end of expenses. If not, the paycheck to paycheck cycle will continue. The strange thing is that this is the reality for millions of people across the world. So if in your life you are feeling that you are struggling, I want you to reflect on Deuteronomy 8:18, which says, God gives the power to get wealth. And I want you to ask yourself, if he gave Abraham the power to build wealth, if he gave Joshua the power to build wealth, if he gave David the power to build wealth, if he gave Solomon the power to build wealth, why not you? You see, all of the names that I have called, they understand more than the source, they understand the process. And you need to invest your time, talent, and resources to understand the process from which wealth is built. And what I'm giving to you, revealing to you today, is some of those processes. So You have an income. That income is subject to expenses. At the end of expenses, what you need is a positive balance sheet. Why? Because you want to invest in future plans. And two, you want to have a smart investment portfolio. All of these are processes that all the wealthy kings and all the wealthy people that follow biblical principles clearly understand. And if you want to position yourself to build wealth the right way, the biblical way, I urge you to commit the time, talent, and the resources to truly understand the essence of what is being said here to you today. All right. So we understand desire. We begin by looking at clear vision. You must have a clear mental picture of what you want to accomplish, why, and how. And that's where the desire comes into play. That's where the reason comes into play. And that's where the strategy comes into play. What I've explained is your desire. You have a desire to position yourself for financial independence. You must have a source of income. That income will be subject to some form of expense. At the end of expense, you want to have a positive bank balance. Why? Because you want to invest in the future plan. The future plan that you're aiming for is financial independence. And it makes a whole lot of sense to have a smart investment strategy. We will talk about all of that as we go into strategy. So that represents, for the moment, your desire. Now let's examine the reason for your desire. You see, the average person going after wealth, they want to attain wealth from me, myself, and I. And that's the wrong motive. All right. In 1 Timothy 6:10, you clearly understand that it is clearly stated that the love of money is the root cause of all kinds of evil. Now, pause a bit. I'm not saying that money is evil, but I'm saying that when you put money above people, you end up hurting people. The very source from which money comes from, and that undermines your ability to build wealth. So now let's examine the reason that you should have for wanting to build wealth. And that reason is clearly established in Genesis 12, 2 and 3. In Genesis 12, 2 and 3, we learn that God made a promise to Abraham. And what was that promise? 3 promises God made to Abraham. 1, God says, I will bless you. That's 1. 2, God says, so you can be a blessing. That's 2. And 3, all the people of the earth will be blessed through you. That's a third promise that God made to Abraham in Genesis 12, 2 and 3. So I want us to pause a little bit to just examine this. Because when you align your reason for wanting to build wealth to God's principle of positioning you to build wealth, the path to embrace financial independence and financial freedom becomes much easier. So the promise that God made to Abraham is that he's going to bless him. And God wants to bless you the same way he blessed Abraham, the same way he blessed David, the same way he blessed Solomon. He wants to bless you. But in God blessing you, it's important for you to recognize that that blessing that God has given to you is not your own. God bless you so you can be a blessing to others. So the whole motive and objective of getting wealth, it is because you want to position yourself to bless others, to help people through challenging times, to help people to overcome poverty, to help people to overcome trauma, to help people to overcome tough times. You're blessed so you can be a blessing to others. That's the real reason that you want to position yourself to build wealth. And guess what happened? When you're blessed and you're empowered and in that position of strength to bless others, others by extension, they are now able to bless others. You create that positive ripple effect of the overflow of blessings in people's lives. And this is God's principles to position you to build wealth. Wealth is not to be built for it to be all yours. But the strange thing about it, when you understand this concept, and when you apply this concept, and when you master this concept, you position yourself to constantly be in your overflow of abundance. As time progresses, we will go deeper into all of this. But I trust that these concepts that you're getting is helping you to better unlock biblical truths and biblical reality that is there for you for the taking to position you for greatness. Remember, you were born to prosper. And the objective of Best Life Ministry is to give you the tools and the information and the support systems to transform your life. Now, the third concept that I want to look at, the third pillar of clear vision, having a clear vision, I want us to talk about your strategy. Because what happens very often, people have a desire. You want a desire to be rich. You want a desire to start and scale a 6-7 figure brand. You have a desire to find your loved ones. You have a desire. But is the motive right? All right. Is the motive right? And do you understand the strategy that you need to deploy to position yourself to come in to greatness? You see, it is important to understand the source of all wealth, our Creator. But in understanding the source also wants you to understand the process. And that process is very important. So I want us to examine two things. One, we have already examined it, but I want us to advance that examination into the second concept. In Genesis 12:2 and 3, we learn that God made a promise to Abraham. I will bless you so you can be a blessing, and all people of the earth will be blessed through you. That's a promise. Was that promise fulfilled? That promise was fulfilled, yes, because Abraham followed God's guidance and principles, even when he doubted, even when he didn't know what would have been the outcome, he followed a principle. So in Genesis 13:2, we now learn that Abraham is rich and righteous. He was rich and he was righteous. Righteous says that he was following God's principles. And because he was following God's principle, he was able to be rich. But what was he rich in? We learn in Genesis 13:2 that Abraham now had land. We learn that Abraham now had livestock. We learn that Abraham now had silver. We learn that Abraham now had gold in abundance. We also learn that Abraham had servants. And we also learn that Abraham, he had an army of over 319 to provide him with the security that he needed with the wealth that he had now accomplished. So that promise was fulfilled. But it's important for you to pause a bit to understand strategies. Because inasmuch as I explained that Abraham had access to livestock and land and silver and gold and servants and an army of over 390, the message that is being communicated here in terms of the process and the strategies may be completely lost in translation. What I'm attempting here to do is to make it so clear that you have a better understanding and a better way of interpreting processes and strategies that can position you for greatness. Now, if you recall back in those days, livestock signified wealth. Now, if livestock signified wealth, what do you think Abraham was doing to increase his wealth? He was increasing his livestock. All right, he was increasing his livestock so he can reach demand, because Abraham was a trader. So as he increases livestock, he was now able to find buyers across different regions, different countries. And because that demand increased for his livestock, he was able to increase in his wealth strategies. We also learned that Abraham had land. And what is his strategy in land? Perhaps at that time, the value of land, while it would have appreciated, the appreciation could not have been leveraged. But guess what could have been leveraged? He had land, he had servants, he had an army of over 319 that helped him to push kings off of the land and provide security to kings of that time. Could he have provided accommodation for his servants? Quite possible as a strategy. Could he have provided accommodation for his military men? Quite possible. Could he have deducted revenue or whatever bartering was taking place at that time to add to his wealth? Is it possible also that he could have leveraged his labor forces to help others to achieve end results and be paid? Similar to what is being done in modern day in the work environment? Quite possible. Strategies. So you may understand the source, but very often as you interpret the teaching, you never get the source. You never get the process. And it's important for you to get the process, because when you understand the source but not the process, you struggle to obtain what the source wants you to attain. So let us go back into some of the strategies. The possibility exists that you want to be financially independent. So you cannot be a shelf-seater and arrive at financial independence. That's not the law of nature. It doesn't work that way. So if you want to get to that point of financial independence, first of all, you need a source of income. That source of income for you may be beginning now with starting to work. But the real motive behind work, you must have a strategy behind why you're working. You work to earn, you earn to save, you save to invest, and you invest to build wealth. Now, Abraham practiced this principle. And throughout generations, many generations after his life, we see evidence of that. Because Abraham became the father of nation. It is because of his seeds, his offspring, Judaism was founded, Christianity was founded, and Islam was founded. He became the father of nations. That's why Abraham is called the father of nations. But let me get back to strategies. When you have a strategy, the possibility exists that all of this is for your taking, but you need to commit the time, talent, and resources to understand the biblical principles and apply them. It's not enough for you to know it. It's equally important for you to apply. All right. But as we go deeper into the principles, as we go deeper into the processes, there's a lot for you to understand. And before I get to strategies, I want to help you to understand something. It's important for you to understand what's a clear vision. It's important for you to understand tools and processes. It's important for you to understand leadership. It's important for you to understand systems. All right. It's important for you to understand getting the right information, getting the right data. So there's a lot for us to unpack over a period of time as we set the stage to provide you with not only the source, but the process that you can deploy to position yourself to prosper. Because we believe that you were born to prosper, but you need to understand the source and the processes. So your strategy to get to financial independence is to work, is to earn, is to save, is to invest and build wealth. One of the things that I see many persons struggle with, depending on which part of the world you're in, is investing. You go to some parts of the world and you ask, what are you investing in? And then you recognize that that term investment really doesn't have any significance to people. Because one, enough is not being taught about it. And if even enough is being taught about it, in many developing countries, they don't have the smart investment portfolios. So here is where you have to now be creative. Strategies. All right. The creator wants you to be creative because the creator says, and again, Deuteronomy 8:18, God gives the power to get wealth. So when God is giving you the power to get wealth, he can position you to become an exceptional thinker. He can position you to become a thinker that thinks outside of the box. And he can position you to see possibilities where the majority of the people in the world see a problem, because he gives the power to get wealth. So some of the things that you may be able to start investing in is perhaps in stocks and bonds. Of course, in the developed world, you can simply, find a broker and they're going to invest in stocks and bonds and mutual funds and hedge funds. And they may even help you to invest in real estate. But in developing economies, you may not have this opportunity if you don't have the right information, because the great books say, a lack of knowledge, people shall perish. Because the opportunities may exist, but not through eyesight. You have to understand it by mindsight. And what exactly do I mean by this? Is it possible that in developing economies, you may have a brokerage company, a merchant bank? And is it possible that that merchant bank may be involved in merchant services where they can help you, one, set up an account, and two, make a purchase on international stocks, bonds, and mutual funds for you? Is it possible? Yes, it is. So you see, the process may not be as clear now that you know the source of all wealth. And when you understand the process, the source, but not the process, because the process may not be clear, may not be eyesight, mindsight, but mindsight, you become distant from what the creator, the blessing that the creator wants to pour into your life. Because lack of knowledge, a people shall perish. So I highlighted a number of strategies that, of course, you need to have a deeper understanding of knowledge, applied knowledge. And it's the ability to attain this knowledge and apply this knowledge is what's going to set you up to feel and know that you were born to prosper the biblical way. Now, let me break this down a little bit more. And I'm going to make it clear because I'm going to show you possibilities where many persons see the difficulty. So you work to earn, you earn to save, but now you're saving, you don't know what to invest in. Let us suppose that you're ambitious and God wants you to be an ambitious person. When God gives you one blessing, He don't want you to bury it. He wants you to multiply it. You understand the story, right? The different talents. So with one talent, you don't want to do what we learn in history that disciple did. You don't bury your talent. You don't bury your blessing. You leverage your blessings. You multiply your blessings. That in of itself is saying that the Creator wants you to prosper. But you must understand the strategies. The reason that disciple bury that talent is because they didn't understand strategies and the multiplying effect that one can attain by deploying the right strategies. And that's something that you need to learn. The source is there for you. The source wants you to prosper. But if you don't understand the process, you're compromised. So you're saving. You're ambitious. You want to invest in real estate, but then you recognize to invest in a $500,000 property, USD, you have to get some skin in the game. To invest in $1 million property, you have to get some skin in the game. But you recognize that your single source of income is not allowing you to save up enough to fast track the vision that you have, that clear vision that you have. What other strategies can you come up with? Because you want to invest in a $1 million property, the financial institution is at least asking you for 10%. You need to at least put down $100,000 in that investment portfolios. And there are other charges that you need to consider, but your earning is not allowing you to save that. It may take you 20, 30, 40 years to actually save that kind of money for the average person before you could invest in that property. But what if? What if your strategies is helping you to understand things like group economics? You know, the great books say where two or more are gathered, I'm among you. That has significance. And the significance that has is God don't want you to fellowship alone. He don't want you to labor alone, because he is more visible, he's more present where two or more are formed. So let us suppose it takes you 1 year to save $10,000. Now, if you have 10 persons with you, in 1 year, you have that $100,000 that you can now leverage in group economics to attain that property strategies. If you're able to save $10,000 a month and you're able to find 10 persons that can save $10,000 a month, guess what? In 1 month, you're able to leverage group economics to position yourself to invest in that property, to own that property. Group economics strategies. The wise men of the book, because of the fact that God gives them the wisdom, God gives them the power to build wealth, They were able to deploy all of these strategies to position themselves to attain greatness. If them, why not you? Are you saying that the miracles that God worked from the beginning of time is no longer being worked in his children's lives? Is that what you're saying to me? God wants you to learn and apply these strategies the same way to position yourself for greatness. Of course, there's much more that needs to be unlocked in everything that I'm saying here. But I at least want to give you an eye opener and to whet your appetite to really understand the Bible and biblical well, perhaps the way you have never understood. My role and my mission with Best Life Ministry is to really help you to understand that you were born to be great. You were born to prosper. Now, in our platform, we're not just going to just give you the theory. We're going to give you the practice. And we're going to help you to make the connections. Because when it comes to strategy there's a number of different strategies that you can deploy to position yourself for greatness, depending on where you are in the world. So I mentioned group economics. But in the US, because of the fact that you may have a strong FICO score, you can leverage that FICO score to get access to business startup capital. And as you get access to business startup capital, that in of itself can be leveraged to help you to start your income producing asset. Your income producing asset that is going to position you for financial independence. Clear vision. All right, so understanding the process that God wants you to know to prosper, it begins with a clear vision. And that clear vision stands on three pillars: your desire, the reason for your desire, and the strategy to attain that desire. I trust that today's lesson really helped you to understand what it takes to have a clear vision or what it represents. Now, if you find this content interesting, I want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and share, and continue being part of this movement, because we are on a mission to empower you to prosper. We are on a mission to position you to live your best life using biblical principles. My name is Gary Thompson, and it has been a pleasure being with you, and I do look forward to being with you soon. Like, subscribe, and share.